Hello everyone. Welcome to SEDA College Online. One more beautiful day with you. I can't wait to see your comments, to read your questions, and to talk to you again today. You are a great company for me, guys. And I hope I am as good a company as you are for me. So, today, what we're going to talk about. Well, this question is more relevant than other days because today we are actually going to talk about feelings. So we'll see new adjectives, maybe adjectives that you are not familiar with or you have rarely seen, you don't feel so comfortable using. So try to tell me in the comments, how do you feel? But today, I don't want you to just use an emoji or tell me I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm tired. I want you to use a more complex adjective, maybe a more complex synonym of happy, or a more complex synonym of tired. Okay? For example, you could say, today I feel exhausted instead of tired. Now, what we're going to do first to get you thinking a little bit about feelings is that I'm going to read a text. It's a situation related to a flatmate issue. I'm sure that many of you might have had experiences about that in the past, or even you may have experiences about that now, the moment we are talking. So I'm going to read a weird scenario situations, which is quite realistic. And your task is to note all the words that you listen that are related to feelings. In order to help you, I'll give you this hint. There are 9 words. And I'm going to read it twice so that you can listen a little bit more carefully and be more focused the second time if you don't get something. Now, if you find the words, type them in the live chat or the comments, and we will check them later together. So, are you ready to listen, guys? Let's start. When I found a flat to rent, I was thrilled. I had been looking for so long, and when I finally got it, I was relieved. However, my flat came with a flatmate. He seemed to be really nice at first, but later I started getting bewildered because some of my things were missing, and I had no idea what had happened. After a few weeks, I was fed up with the situation, and since the only logical suspect was my flatmate, I confronted him. And guess what? He denied everything, started yelling at me, and told me he felt offended. I was so overwhelmed that I couldn't react, and I didn't say anything else. But my things continued disappearing, and the situation was getting desperate. So I decided to take action. One day, when he was out, I broke into his room for a quick search, and I was astonished when I found all my things in a box hidden at the back of the closet. I was delighted that I had found everything, but I knew it was time to find another apartment. So I don't know if something similar has happened to you at some point. I've heard many experiences that you might think, that's impossible. This hasn't happened. But yes, they can happen. So I'll read one more time for you. Focus on the 9 feelings. If you have found the answers, write them in the comments. If you haven't found them yet, listen carefully. When I found a flat to rent, I was thrilled. I had been looking for so long, and when I finally got it, I was relieved. However, my flat came with a flatmate. He seemed to be really nice at first, but later I started getting bewildered because some of my things were missing, and I had no idea what had happened. After a few weeks, I was fed up with the situation, and since the only logical suspect was my flatmate, I confronted him. And guess what? He denied everything, started yelling at me, and told me he felt offended. I was so overwhelmed that I couldn't react, so I didn't say anything else. But my things continued disappearing, and the situation was getting desperate. So I decided to take action. One day, when he was out, I broke into his room for a quick search, and I was astonished when I found all my things in a box hidden at the back of the closet. I was delighted that I had found everything, but I knew it was time to find another apartment. So, did you find the adjective? Yes? No? Do you need some more time, maybe? And tell me, were you familiar with any of these adjectives, or you thought they sounded strange and they were difficult to write down? So let me show you. This is the text I just read, and the underlined words are the 9 adjectives that you were supposed to find. So we have thrilled, relieved, bewildered, fed up, offended, overwhelmed, desperate, astonished, and delighted. Now, what we're going to do, I will not give you definitions yet if you are not sure about something, but I will give you a few seconds to look through the text very, very fast. Try to guess what the meaning of each word is. And then, in the next slide, I will give you the definitions to match them with the words. But first, take a look at the text. I think it can make your life much easier if you can see how the word is used in the context, okay? So take a quick look. And I don't know if this story has ever happened or something similar has ever happened to anyone. Personally, I was lucky. I never had roommates or flatmates. So, and it was a very easy thing for me actually. But I've heard many stories from other people. Alright, so let's take a look now at the meanings. You can see the words again from 1 to 9. Match them with the correct meaning and I will show you the answers. While you are working on that, I will pronounce the words once for you, so you can focus on the pronunciation. Thrilled, relieved, bewildered. So I know this word might be a bit difficult sometimes to pronounce. It's bewildered. It's not wild, wheeled, bewildered. Astonished. See, the first sound here is silent. We don't say astonished, it's astonished. Delighted, fed up, offended, overwhelmed, desperate. Now, in this word as well, some people pronounce it desperate. But your pronunciation is et, desperate. Okay, so let's see how you did with the matching. We have thrilled. Many people get confused here. They think that thrilled has a negative meaning because of thrillers, the movies. But no, it has a positive meaning, something that makes you feel excited. Relieved. When you feel that something is off your chest, relax. Bewildered, it's very, very confused. So it's a nice word to put your vocabulary one level up. Okay, instead of confused, you can use bewildered. Astonished. Astonished means very surprised. Okay. Delighted, of course, very pleased, very happy. Then we have fed up, which is usually followed by the preposition with, fed up with something. And the meaning is that I've had enough. Okay, I can't take any more of that. I'm fed up with the situation. Offended, number 7. When somebody is rude to you, you might feel offended by them. Overwhelmed, number 8. Overwhelmed actually is a word that I don't know if you have heard it before. It's a very, very nice word to use. I think actually that I have a mistake here in the key. It's E. Okay, 8 is E. It means that you don't know how to react because you have strong feelings. And it's not negative, it can be either positive or negative according to the feelings that you have. You might be overwhelmed, for example, because your friends throw you a surprise party and you don't know how to react because of all these positive feelings. But you might be overwhelmed because you have a lot of negative feelings in you. Okay? And last one, desperate, is B, without any hope. Okay? When you are desperate, you have done everything that you could and you are about to use your last resources. So, how do you feel about that? Do you have any questions? Is there something that you don't understand about these words? Tell me in the comments and I'll try to help you as much as I can. And I hope you paid attention to the pronunciation, because the next thing we're going to do is focus a little bit on word stress. Look at the words and tell me, which syllables do you think that we stress? The first one, the second one, the third one. Okay? And if you are alone and if you want to, it can help you a lot if you pronounce the words out loud. Okay? It's much easier to work on pronunciation when you actually say the word. Alright, so let's take a look together. In the first one, we stress thrill, thrilled, thrilled. Well, actually, if you think about it, we have only one syllable because the E is silent. So we actually have one vowel sound. So it's one syllable. Okay. And if you remember the previous classes when we talked about the ED sounds, here your sound is D, thrilled. Okay. Then we have leave, relieved. Okay, the focus is on the second one, relieved. Here, remember it's not wild, it's willed, bewildered. I'm very bewildered. The next one is astonished, very astonished. Of course, here is light, delighted, very delighted. Here, the stress is on the first word, fed up. And you usually link the words, you pronounce them as one, fed up with. The next one is offended. And here, many people think that we stress the first syllable, it's actually the second one. It's not overwhelmed, it's overwhelmed. And the last one, desperate. Remember again, it's not H, it's a T, and we stress the first one, desperate. Alright, so if you still have any questions, please remember, don't hesitate to write down everything you want and I will answer all your questions. So, are you ready to continue? Let's see something else, something different. We'll focus again a bit to the same text that I read before. Remember the flatmate situation. I have 3 questions for you that I want you to try and answer in the comments and the live chat. My first question is, how would you feel if you were in Steve's position? So I want you to give me a feeling. In number 2, what would you do if you were in Steven's position? Okay, so the first one is a feeling. The second one, I'm asking you to give me an action. What would you do? And the third one, what do you think would have happened if Steve hadn't broken into his flatmate's room and found his things? So do you think there would be a different result in the story? Take a minute to write these answers and then we'll talk about it together, okay? How would you feel? What would you do? And what would have happened differently, maybe, if Steve hadn't broken into his flatmate's room? Steve is the name of the person whose things were stolen, by the way, okay? So it's Steve who is the victim of this situation. I just gave him a name to make it easier for you. Okay, I'm still waiting. Type your answers in the comments. And you don't have to write full answers, of course. You can give me shorter answers. Okay, so I will show you some model answers. Okay, it could be anything. Your answers are also correct. These are a few model answers for the first question. How would you feel if you were in Steve's position? Now, I want to show you as well that usually in spoken language, for example, we don't give full answers. It sounds a bit unnatural to give full answers. So in the question, how would you feel if you were in Steve's position? Somebody could just say frustrated. Another one could say, I'd feel frustrated. The full sentence here would be, I'd feel frustrated if I were in Steve's position. But think about it. Think about you when you use the conditionals. Think about when you use the conditional form in your native language, in your mother tongue. Do you actually say the whole sentence every time? I don't think so. Actually, most of the times you just say half of it. So it's perfectly fine if you just give me, I feel frustrated. And the same thing for the second question. What would you do if you were in Steve's position? Go to the police. If you want to focus a little bit on the form, I'd go to the police. And the full sentence, which we have here, but would be unnatural to say, I'd go to the police if I were in Steve's position. Okay? So usually when you are answering a question, you're using shorter forms. Because the information has already been repeated by someone else. You don't have to repeat the full sentence. And a sample answer for the third question. What do you think would have happened if Steve hadn't broken into his flatmate's room and found his things? Short answer, you could say lost more things. He'd have lost more things. Or the full sentence, he'd have lost more things if he hadn't broken into his flatmate's room. So, if you take again a look at these sentences, can you tell me which grammar structure we are talking about? It's 2 structures that we are talking about, actually. Going back and forth for you to see. Any ideas? It's the second conditional and the third conditional that we see here. I don't know if you remember them. I'll refresh your memory a little bit. The usual structure for the second conditional is if plus past simple or past continuous. And the main clause is would plus infinitive. Of course, you can use different models as well if you want. Okay, like could, might, should, etc. And you can see the bold keywords in the sentences. Would feel if you were. Okay. I'd feel if I were. The thing that I want you to remember about the second conditional is that it's something improbable in the future. It is not likely to happen. Like there might be a 1% possibility, but it's 99% it's not gonna happen. So it's something that in your head is a very far away dream that you can't really achieve. And that's why we use it in these sentences, because you are not Steve. You can only imagine to be Steve. Now, the third conditional is a little bit different. If you see, there is a past essence in both second and third. But the second conditional uses past simple, but the truth is it's talking about the present and the future. Now the third conditional, this is the one that talks about the past. Something that was possible at some point in your past. Okay, imagine something that you did. You had to make a choice. You had two options, one or two. You chose the first one, but there was always a possibility to choose the second one. So that's why we use the third conditional to think about what would have happened if we had chosen something different. So what you need here is the past perfect. If and past perfect. And now the main clause uses would again, but there is no infinitive this time. You have and past participle, would have done something. Look at the bold words and the examples as well. Would have happened if Steve hadn't broken. And look at the answer. He'd have lost if he hadn't broken. So I want you to remember these two things, okay? First, the use. Second is about not likely in the future. Third is about another possibility that you had in your past. And then tenses. Past simple, would infinitive, past perfect, would have, past participle. So, I want to practice a little bit with you. And first, I want to see if you can identify the difference in the meaning. So, I have two situations for you, 1 and 2. I want you to read them and tell me in which situation we would use maybe a second conditional sentence, and in which situation would you use a third conditional sentence. Take a quick look and tell me in the comments. 1 third conditional, 1 second conditional. So here there are, of course, keywords that can help you. For example, Joe comes from a wealthy family and owns a house. He has never had a roommate and he will probably never have one in the future. So we have will, probably, in the future. Karen has had many flatmates in the past, but thankfully, she never had any problems. So in the first case, we would use a second conditional to talk about the future and the present. In the second case, we would use the third conditional to talk about the past. So you could say something like that. Remember, Joe doesn't have a flatmate. He will never have a flatmate. He has money to afford his own house. So this is something very imaginary for him. If my flatmate stole from me, the flatmate that I don't have, I would leave. But he has never found himself in such a situation. And look at that. Now remember that Karen has had a lot of flatmates. So she's thinking, if my flatmate Mary had stolen from me when we were living together 2 years ago, I would have left. Okay, so you see the difference? Number 2 is completely imaginary. Number 3 is a different option, a different possibility in a past situation. Now, this is your opportunity to ask me any questions about the second and the third conditional because we are going to practice as well. I have a few sentences for you to complete with second or third. Okay, so here you go. Half the sentence, so one of the two verbs in each sentence is there. So if you remember the forms, that can help you. If you see number 1, for example, it says, if I had bought that house, this is the past perfect. So what are you going to continue with? Would and infinitive, or would have and past participle? Take a minute to look through all 5 examples and then we will check together. I'm going to read the examples for you as well while you're working. If I had bought that house, I moved to the suburbs. If I had enough money, I live on my own. I would have paid the rent on time if my flatmate gave me the money. I would find it hard to live with someone if we have similar personalities. And I repaint the whole house if the landlord hadn't forbidden it. So take a few more seconds and remember the difference in meaning. The third conditional means that you had the possibility to do this, but you didn't. The second conditional is that you are not going to have this possibility in your future. It's not very likely. And of course, keep writing your answers. You can tell me in the comments and the live chat what you think. All right? Now, I know the conditionals can be a little bit tricky and challenging sometimes. But as I told you, when we're talking about the 0 and the first conditional, it's mostly a matter of meaning. I really believe that if you focus on the use and the different functions, it will be much easier for you to make it a better used part of the language for you. All right, so let's take a look at the answers together. This is the third conditional. If I had bought the house 2 years ago, I would have moved to the suburbs, but I decided not to buy the house. If I had money right now, I would live on my own. Okay? But here, there is no possibility in the past. You never had the money, and it is not likely to have the money in the near future. So it's kind of imaginary to wake up tomorrow and suddenly find the money to live on your own. I would have paid the rent on time if my flatmate had given me the money. So there was the possibility, but my flatmate did not give me the money on time, so I was late. Number 4, I would find it hard to live with someone else if we had similar personalities. Okay. Maybe if both people are kind of aggressive, yes, it might be hard to live together. And number 5, I would have repainted the whole house if the landlord hadn't forbidden it. So I asked my landlord, he said no, so I didn't repaint it. Now I hope this is a little bit more clear for you, but again, you can continue asking me questions if you're not sure about something. And we are moving on to the last part of our class. I told you that we're going to see a little bit of writing an article to give advice, to give tips. And of course, because we talked a little bit about conditionals as well, we will see how we can use them in such type of article. The first thing that you need to remember about the structure is that we usually need about 4 paragraphs: introduction, main body, conclusion. Now here, because you are giving advice, it's not really necessary to have a conclusion. Like in my model, I have just an introduction and 3 paragraphs with 1 tip for each paragraph. So you can read it for a moment, and what I want you to do is try to identify the conditionals. And if you want, you can tell me how many. If you find them really fast, you can also type in the comments which sentences do you think are conditionals. And if you can, I would ask you to identify them. Now here I don't only have the second and the third, I also have 0 and 1. I have everything so that you can revise and refresh your memory a little bit on all the conditionals. So take a quick look and try to find the conditional sentences. Okay, I'll just read it for you very fast, give you some more time. Sharing your house or room with another person can be really hard at times. So what can you do? Here are a few tips. Set rules from the beginning. It's easier to maintain a healthy relationship with your flatmate if there are clear rules. Remember that time when you had to wash the dishes because your flatmate was tired? It would have been much simpler if you had agreed on a clear housework schedule. In harder situations, try to take the high road. An eye for an eye is not a very good idea. This would only create chaos. Try to have a calm and polite conversation, and if this fails, talk to your landlord. Finally, some cases can be hopeless. What would I do? I'd probably move. But if you don't have that option, try to find an outlet for your frustration. Talking to friends, doing sports, Even keeping a diary would be some good ideas. So, did you find any of the conditionals? Let's take a look. These are the conditionals. We have 6 cases, and I want you to focus on the fact that some of them are half sentences. As I told you, it's very common to use the half conditional sentence instead of the full sentence when we speak or write. Now you see the first one. It's easier to maintain a healthy relationship if there are clear rules. This is 0 conditional because it's a fact. Okay, I'm just giving you a fact. It's not talking about the future, something that happens. Then we have a third conditional sentence. Because you see, I'm talking about a past event. Remember that time when you had to wash the dishes? Okay, it would have been much easier if you had agreed on a clear schedule instead of leaving it free. Then we have a second conditional, which is half a sentence. An eye for an eye is not a good idea. This would only create chaos. Now, if you wanted to write the full sentence, you would probably say something like, if you did that, the eye for an eye, it would only create chaos. Then we go to a first conditional with imperative. If this fails, talk to your landlord. So it's an order, but here it's a strong advice, if you want, for the future. Then we have second conditionals. What would I do? And again, this is half a sentence. We don't have the if clause. What would I do if I were you? This is missing. I'd probably move. Again, this is half the sentence. I'd probably move if I were you. But you see, it's too much to use it every time. And the last one, if you don't have that option, try to find an outlet. Again, this is a first conditional with imperative, just like the other one that we saw. So I think it's a very good opportunity for you to see how conditionals are used all together. And tell me if this representation helped you. I'd really like to know if you thought that was helpful, seeing all the conditionals together used in the same text. Now, before we finish, I just want to focus your attention on something more that is important when you write anything, actually. As I've told you before, the vocabulary can be important too. So try to use a few words that are a little bit more complex. For example, we have set rules, maintain. Instead of have a healthy relationship, we say maintain a healthy relationship. And you can also use idioms. Look at that. Take the high road. An eye for an eye. These are very common and really useful idioms for you to use. And then we have a few more complex words like chaos, hopeless, an outlet, frustration. So keep that as a checklist in your mind. Remember we were talking about that in the previous class as well. Do I have a variety of grammar? Check. Do I have more complex vocabulary? Check. Okay. And the last thing that we're going to do, of course, is our recap. See what we talked about today. So we listened for keywords specifically for feelings, and we saw some vocabulary related to feelings, more complex adjectives. we saw a little bit of pronunciation and specifically the word stress, which syllable is stressed. And our grammar was about second and third conditional. And of course, our writing, how to write an article to give advice. And you see that not only should is your option to give advice, should or shouldn't, must or mustn't. You can use conditionals and you can use in many, many different forms. So, I hope this helped you guys. Please again tell me in the comments what was the thing that stuck with you today. I really want to know. Okay, so tell me in the comments. And I was really happy to be with you here for one more class. Alright, guys? Enjoy the rest of your day and see you next class. Bye.